This is probably one of the most popular, definitely probably one of the most resilient. It's now got the same legal treatment and regulatory treatment as other commodities and store values. And it has done a better job of protecting my purchasing power than anything else. Well, if you're in the finance game, like, you got to pay attention, right? So like the facts have changed now and it's become much more obvious.
Anthony Pompliano, CEO of Professional Capital Management, recently spoke with Phil Rosen, co-founder of Opening Bell Daily, on the future forecast for interest rate decreases, what Trump's trade means for investors, and the impact on Bitcoin. According to Anthony Pompliano, people are looking for something to be excited about, and Trump's increasing odds of winning the presidency are causing a commotion. This explains why the Trump trade is driven by speculation and excitement. He noted that some are thinking back to 2016, when Trump's measures resulted in deregulation, a sliding dollar value, and zero interest rates. Pompliano argues that the market is currently pricing in an 80 to 90% chance of an interest rate cut by September, just before the election. Powell's warning that the Fed may wait too long if it waits for inflation to reach 2%, along with Trump's suggestion that the Fed should not decrease interest rates before the election, leads him to believe this dynamic is particularly intriguing. Pompliano also stated that interest rates reflect the status of the economy, and that the Trump trade is primarily about policy-driven deregulation. He believes that the recent attempt on Trump's life is more likely to be the cause of the rise in Bitcoin prices than Trump's increasing chances.
The Trump trade stuff is hilarious to me, right? Because I think that there are two things. One, there's just the excitement. Like, we're in kind of the sideways summer. It's really boring. People are looking for something to be excited about. Here comes, President Donald Trump's odds are skyrocketing that he's going to be the president. People go and say, let's look in the rearview mirror at 2016. What happened? There was deregulation. There was devaluing of the dollar. There was interest rates at zero. Like, all these things that occurred. Oh, if Trump gets in office, we're going to go right back to that. And so that excitement is actually speculation, right? At the same time, he is talking about some of his policies, and there is a lot of deregulation. It does appear that some of the policies would be kind of weaker dollar, higher inflation, et cetera. And so how do you position yourself? Well, if the odds are increasing, that means that you should be also increasing the odds that you're positioned to benefit from that situation. Now, the interest rate cuts specifically, I don't think are as much part of kind of the overall Trump trade. Trump and Biden both have interfered quite often with the Federal Reserve in a soft power way. So neither one of them walks into the Federal Reserve and says, hey, Jerome Powell, you're going to do this. But they sure try to influence it via soft power, right? So Trump, his method of influence was Twitter. He would just get on Twitter and start tweeting about, weakening the dollar and all these kind of different things. Biden would be more kind of politically correct in that on multiple occasions, he called Jerome Powell to his office when things weren't going so hot and basically was like kind of calling the teacher to the principal's office saying like, hey, what's going on? And so this is not a partisan thing. If you're the president of the United States, a huge part of how you are judged is based on the economy. And one of the biggest inputs into the economy is what is the cost of capital? And so naturally, you want to influence in either direction what you think should happen, although you don't have control. And so Trump now is out in the public saying, hey, they shouldn't cut interest rates before the election. That would be election interference. That would be, all these different things. On the same side, Jerome Powell had some comments where he's like, well, listen, if we wait till inflation is at 2%, we waited too long. And so there's this very interesting dynamic. And if you go and you look in the market, depending on what data point you look at, whether it's a prediction market, the bond yields, et cetera, it's like 80 to 90% likelihood that by September, we are going to have an interest rate cut. That happens to be months before an election. And so it's just a very kind of interesting aspect. But the Trump trade, I think, is more like policy driven of the deregulation, et cetera. The interest rates are probably more a reflection of like what's going on in the economy. I have a harder time believing that Bitcoin's price is going up because Trump's odds are going up as president. Yes, he is sympathetic to crypto and Bitcoin. He has said, hey, I'm a pro crypto candidate. I will protect this. I think he's even gone as far as to say he wants every Bitcoin to be made in America. Yeah. Great tagline, not exactly how the network works, but at least the sentiment, I think, is very well received by the American population. I actually think that Bitcoin's price has been going up because somebody tried to assassinate the president, right? And this idea that like that is a potentially destabilizing event, is a very chaotic, uncertain, ever-changing situation that now people say, like, wait a second, there's political violence going on. And you've seen this in other countries, and that's really where I get the data point from. You've seen places where there has been some sort of conflict, there's been some sort of political violence, there's been some sort of controversy, chaos, uncertainty, etc. And in those countries, you see more buying of Bitcoin. And so if you go back and you look on Saturday night, the night that somebody shot Donald Trump, you can see that on the news of the president, the former president has been shot, the price actually drops. Immediately. I mean, it's like the news hits, the wire and gets on Twitter, the price drops. And then as soon as everyone realizes he's okay, the price just 180s and rips higher. And so to me, what that is signaling is the price dropped because there was a moment of panic and fear. And like, did the former president just get assassinated, right? Did he just get killed on live television? The second that people realized it didn't actually work, it wasn't successful, the price goes up because people realize, like, we're in a new era now, right? Like we haven't had an assassination attempt on the president in terms of like actually physically hurting the president or former president in decades. And so when that occurs, people start to say, oh, this is possible, right? There's an uncertainty to this. And so that to me is the catalyst of why Bitcoin has been going up.
Anthony Pompliano describes the Trump trade, which is fueled by excitement and speculation. He points out that interest rate reduction are not part of the trade, and the Bitcoin boom is due to the recent murder attempt on Trump, which signals a new period of uncertainty and increased interest in Bitcoin. According to Anthony Pompliano, Donald Trump's ideas are more advantageous to the economy than Joe Biden's. He pointed out that Trump's deregulation and weaker dollar policies might boost economic growth, and that his knowledge of cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence could be useful. However, he also noted that there are drawbacks, such as the possibility of inflation and the impact on the national debt. Pompliano stated that Bitcoin has persistently maintained purchasing power over the last decade, making it an appealing store of value asset. He emphasized that its robust computer network, expanding acceptance, and legal and regulatory regulation make it a popular option. He also noted that the fact that hundreds of millions of people globally own and utilize Bitcoin demonstrates its resilience. Pompliano further claimed that even bright people such as Jamie Dimon and Donald Trump had altered their thoughts regarding Bitcoin.
From my perspective, looking at the two kind of options on the table, from a purely economic standpoint, forget all of the other topics that are part of evaluating a president, et cetera. From a pure economic standpoint, Donald Trump would be much better than Joe Biden, right? Now, when you look at that, what are the downsides? You have to understand the policies, right? So deregulation, weaker dollar, and kind of an understanding of crypto and AI, et cetera, with picking J.D. Vance as vice president and some of the people he surrounded himself with. If you look at, let's say, weaker dollar, right? It can be inflationary. Doesn't have to be, but it definitely can be. On top of that, if you look at things like Trump recently came out and said he wants to change the corporate tax rate from 21% down to 15%. Sounds awesome. There's something called the Laffer curve, right? And Art Laffer came up with this idea that if you actually lower the corporate tax rate, that will encourage job growth, R&D, innovation, growth, etc. Which means that even though each corporation is paying a lower percent, the overall aggregate amount of taxes collected will go up. But the beauty of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin seems to have the facts on its side, right? Kind of the truth is on its side. And what I mean by that is there's hundreds of millions of people around the world that hold it and use it. Bitcoin is the strongest computer network ever created in the world. You also now have governments around the world becoming much more sympathetic and positive towards the legal and regulatory treatment. And then also, Bitcoin is the only asset I'm aware of that has consistently protected your purchasing power over the last decade with this accelerated inflation. And so when you look at it from that perspective, you say to yourself, okay, of the store of value assets, this is probably one of the most popular, definitely probably one of the most resilient. It's now got the same legal treatment and regulatory treatment as other commodities and store values. And it has done a better job of protecting my purchasing power than anything else. Well, if you're in the finance game, like you got to pay attention, right? So like the facts have changed now and it's become much more obvious. And so the last thing I'll say is Jamie Dimon's not dumb. Right? Like this guy's incredibly intelligent. And so sure, would he probably in hindsight go back 10 years and be like, oh, I wish that I would have bought Bitcoin and, understood this and got the bank and whatever. Sure. But it's not actually where you start. It's all about when you are presented with new facts, do you change your mind? Like that is the sign of intelligence. And so Jamie Dimon's path is no different than Trump's. go back. Trump was railing on Bitcoin too. Everyone has amnesia. We forgot about that because now he's coming to speak at the Bitcoin conference, right? Like, shows up at the Bitcoin conference. He's going to say, Orange coin is good. I'm the Bitcoin president. And people literally forget all the other stuff he said. Jamie Dimon comes out tomorrow and says, Orange coin is good. Number go up. I'm going to be the Bitcoin banker. Like, let's roll. Literally, you ain't going to hear anybody complaining about Jamie Dimon anymore, right? And why do I know that? Because that's what they did with Larry Fink. Larry Fink is the CMO of Bitcoin. He has been accepted with wide open arms. People are saying, Larry, thank you. You are amazing. Keep going on TV saying it's a flight to quality, all these things. Larry Fink was not a Bitcoiner 5 years ago, right? He changed his mind. And so I do think that maybe a word of caution to the Bitcoin community, when people disagree with the Bitcoin story, the Bitcoin facts, it's okay to push back, right? Like part of the debate is try to educate them and convince them. But don't kick people while they're down, because they may actually change their mind. And if they change their mind, we have a history now of accepting these people kind of on our team. And so when they do that, don't dunk on them and say, I bought before you. Instead say, hey, thank you so much. Like, who else can you now help us go do it? Because one of the big stories I think in Bitcoin is the messenger matters now more than the message. Larry Fink is more important than anything any Bitcoiner is going to say. Jamie Dimon will be even more important. And if the president of the United States is running around doing press conferences talking about Bitcoin is good, the world will change in a crazy, crazy way.
With a recent surge in capital inflows, investor interest in Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, ETFs, continues to expand. Investors remain faith in Bitcoin ETFs as an investment tool, despite the cryptocurrency's recent price decline. With a net inflow of $102.67 million in a single day, the BlackRock IBIT ETF's net assets currently total $20.67 billion. Given the current market volatility, this is an outstanding accomplishment. Some Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, ETFs, saw inflows, including the VanEck ETF and the Fidelity FBTC fund. Others, like as the Grayscale GBTC ETF, experienced outflows. The Fidelity FBTC fund had a net inflow of $2.78 million every day, bringing its total net assets to $9.82 billion. The VanEck ETF, on the other hand, received capital flows of $1.8 million. Inflows into exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, have surpassed $1 billion in the last 10 days, reflecting a renewed confidence among investors and asset managers. Many analysts believe that the current price of Bitcoin is an excellent moment to buy, with others predicting it might reach $100,000. Bitcoin ETFs are changing rapidly. Some regard them as bubbles, while others believe they will experience a historical growth in value. Investors' unwavering interest might usher in a new era for digital assets. However, whether this excitement will transform the current crisis into a long-term revolution in Bitcoin investing remains to be seen. Investors and professionals are closely watching what happens with the Bitcoin ETF space dice as the market swings. As we close, what are your opinions on the interview? Are you pro-Trump or pro-Biden? Why?